Get that man off my driveway before he steals the air we breathe. The woman's voice sliced through the calm morning like a blade through silk. Her heels clicked sharply on the marble, echoing down the gated street of Eden Valley. Behind her, a group of neighbors laughed, polite, brittle laughter that smelled of money and fear. The man they were talking about didn't move. He simply stood by the gate, hands tucked into cheap gray gloves, eyes hidden beneath a navy cap. To them, he was just another security hire, a name on a clipboard. To himself, he was something entirely different. His name was Malcolm Reed. The papers might have called him the Solar King once, CEO of Reed Horizons Energy, worth over $3 billion. But here, in this neighborhood of power and pretension, he was invisible again. He wanted it that way. Every morning, Malcolm arrived before sunrise, clocked in with the other guards, and leaned against the cold iron gates. He'd watch the million-dollar cars glide by, their drivers too busy to nod at the man who kept their world locked tight. Sometimes he smiled at the absurdity of it, sometimes he didn't. He'd walked away from his fortune 6 months ago, sick of smiles that cost more than truth. He wanted to see how people acted when money didn't speak for him, and so the billionaire became the gatekeeper, another nameless worker in a high-visibility vest. That morning, as the insult hung in the air, Malcolm's radio crackled. "Unit 4, are you hearing this?" a voice whispered. His partner, Derek, barely holding back laughter. Malcolm pressed the button. "Yeah, loud and clear. And yes, I'm still breathing the expensive air." Derek chuckled softly. "Careful, man. They might invoice you for it." A hint of humor eased the tension. Then Malcolm straightened, nodded politely at the furious woman, and stepped aside. Her car rolled past, leaving the scent of burnt rubber and expensive perfume. The other guards glanced at him, some pitying, some amused. Malcolm didn't care. If there was one thing money had taught him, it was that arrogance sounded the same in every zip code. He looked up at the golden sign arching over the gate. "Welcome to Eden Valley." It glittered like a promise and a lie all at once. Eden, he thought, was supposed to be paradise. Here, it was just real estate with better lighting. He pulled out a small notebook from his pocket and wrote a single line. "People forget that the ones holding the gates can also own the keys." As the sun climbed higher, Malcolm leaned against the booth window, watching the world wake. Joggers passed. Delivery trucks hummed, a small food truck parked near the curb, bright yellow, cheerful, out of place among the marble fences. On its side, a hand-painted sign read, "Aisha's Bites, love in every meal." He watched as a young woman with curly hair and tired eyes handed out coffee cups with a smile too real for this street. Something about her energy, gentle, unpolished, alive, made the noise of Eden Valley fade for a second. Then his radio buzzed again. "Unit 4!" the supervisor barked. "Gate check. Resident complaint." Malcolm exhaled. "Copy that," he said, voice calm, steady. As he opened the gate, a thought crossed his mind. In a world obsessed with appearance, maybe the only way to find truth was to hide inside a lie. He smiled slightly beneath his cap. Eden Valley had just met its quietest storm. By noon, Eden Valley shimmered under the kind of heat that made marble look merciful. The rich hid behind tinted glass and perfect lawns. Malcolm, meanwhile, wiped his brow with a frayed towel and stared across the street at the one spot that actually felt human. Aisha's food truck. The truck looked like sunshine on wheels, bright yellow paint, a crooked menu board, and the smell of real food, garlic, pepper, fried chicken, and hope. Every day, workers from construction sites and delivery vans lined up, laughing, calling her name. The residents, of course, pretended not to notice. Malcolm pretended too, at least at first. He waited until the line thinned, then walked over, his vest still dusted with gate grime. Aisha looked up from her fryer, eyes the color of roasted coffee. "Gatekeeper," she teased, "you finally decided to eat with the rest of us mortals?" Her voice carried that quick, teasing rhythm of someone who'd seen too much to take anyone too seriously. Malcolm smiled, careful not to overdo it. "Guess paradise makes a man hungry," she snorted. "Paradise? You mean Eden v. Eiley?" She said it like a designer brand, rolling her eyes. "Their dogs eat better than most folks here." He laughed softly, surprised by how easy it felt. When she handed him his plate, rice, beans, and a single piece of fried chicken, he noticed she'd slipped in an extra drumstick. He looked up. "You overcharged yourself." "Don't worry," she said, shrugging. "I give discounts to people who look like they work for a living." He wanted to tell her she had no idea who she was feeding. But instead he said, "Then I must owe you for a lifetime." Aisha chuckled, brushing hair from her face. Her hands were scarred slightly, kitchen burns. Maybe. But they moved with calm precision. Behind her, a tiny radio hummed an old R&B track, soft and soulful. It reminded Malcolm of childhood Saturdays before money, before pressure, before the spotlight turned love into suspicion. Across the street, a sleek SUV slowed. Inside, two young women watched the scene. One of them, Harper Graves, lifted her phone. "Recording." "Look at him," she whispered, zooming in on the guard. "Romance at the gate." How tragic. The clip would hit private group chats before sunset, but Malcolm didn't notice. He was busy savoring. His first honest conversation in months. They talked about everything and nothing, how the city felt colder despite the heat, how people with less often laughed more. Aisha confessed she wanted to open a real cafe someday, a place where everyone can sit, even if they can't pay that day. Malcolm nodded slowly. That's the kind of dream the world tries to buy off. She tilted her head. "And you? What do you dream about, Mr. Gatekeeper?" He hesitated. "To be seen for who I am, not what I have." Aisha studied him for a second, as if she'd heard something heavy behind the words. Then she smiled. "Well, that's free here." "Comes with the rice and beans," he grinned. And for the first time in a long time, it felt real. The food, the laughter, the sweat. Everything smelled like truth. A car horn blared, supervisor's call, back to the gate. Malcolm nodded goodbye. "See you tomorrow, chef." She waved, already serving the next customer. "Don't forget to breathe that rich people air for me." As he crossed the street, phone screens glowed inside the SUV. Laughter erupted, sharp, digital, cruel. Malcolm didn't hear it, but the storm was forming. He only felt the warmth of Aisha's kindness and the strange certainty that Eden Valley had just started testing its own name. By sunrise the next day, Eden Valley had a new obsession, a 30-second video, shaky but clear. Spread like perfume through the private group chats of the rich. Aisha's yellow truck gleamed on screen. Then came the caption, "Lunch, love. The guard who flirts for free food." Laughter bubbled beneath the video as it played in manicured living rooms and marble kitchens. For some, it was amusement. For others, it was proof that the world below their gates still existed, only to entertain them. Harper Graves uploaded it to her social feed with a string of laughing emojis. "Cute," she wrote. "He's playing billionaire in reverse." The irony was lost on her. Malcolm found out 2 hours later. Derek handed him his phone. "Man, you're trending." For all the wrong reasons. The screen showed thousands of views, dozens of comments. Typical. "Gold digger." "They belong together." He scrolled once, then locked the phone. Silence hung between them. "Want me to flag it?" Derek asked quietly. Malcolm shook his head. "Let them talk." They always do. His tone was calm, but a muscle in his jaw betrayed him. Across the street, Aisha was already feeling the burn. The morning crowd avoided her truck. A man in a designer tracksuit smirked as he passed. "Still feeding the security staff, sweetheart?" She didn't answer. Her smile stayed, but her hands trembled as she flipped pancakes. When Mrs. Belinda Graves arrived, pearls tight around her neck, temper tighter, everyone stepped back. She slammed her manicured hand on the truck counter. "My daughter showed me the video." You think this is a dating service? Aisha blinked. Ma'am, don't lie to me. You've been giving free meals to guards. To him. Belinda pointed across the street where Malcolm stood, frozen. The world seemed to shrink into that single gesture. The workers fell silent. Aisha's throat went dry. It was just food, ma'am. He's kind. Belinda's voice rose, slicing through her words. Kind? Kindness doesn't pay rent. You embarrass my business and my family. Malcolm stepped forward, calm but firm. Ma'am, this has nothing to do with her. Belinda turned on him, eyes full of disdain. Stay out of this, boy. Do your job and guard the gate. The word boy hit harder than any slap. Malcolm felt every guard nearby stiffen. He inhaled slowly, forcing the anger down where it wouldn't explode. Power could silence cruelty, but disguise required restraint. Aisha's face burned. She wanted to shout, to defend him, but Belinda had already turned away. Pack your things, she ordered. You're finished here. When the SUV disappeared down the road, the air around the truck felt heavy, used. Aisha leaned against the counter. Trying not to cry, her aunt's restaurant license hung by a thread, and so did her job. Malcolm crossed the street quietly. Stopping just short of the truck, you okay? He asked. She laughed once, brittle. Define okay. He hesitated, then said softly, People believe what fits their comfort. Not the truth, she nodded, wiping her eyes. Guess comfort's expensive around here. He wanted to tell her the truth, to pull off the mask, to silence their laughter with the weight of who he really was. But if he did, she'd look at him differently, and that would ruin everything he came here to find. So instead, he just said, I'm sorry you got dragged into this. She shook her head. You didn't drag me. They did. As he walked back to the gate, Aisha whispered under her breath. Paradise sure feels cheap today, behind tinted windows. The same phones kept buzzing because Eden Valley never let a scandal die quietly. By evening, the laughter had gone quiet, but the damage still lingered in the air like smoke after a kitchen fire. Eden Valley had moved on to its next distraction. Yet Aisha's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Are you the gatekeeper's girlfriend? One text read. Another. Saw your video, girl. Didn't know you liked charity cases? She muted them all. The more she tried to ignore it, the louder it seemed to echo. Her aunt's voice didn't help. You've embarrassed me, Mrs. Belinda snapped that night, pacing the narrow living room. Feeding a guard? Smiling on camera? You think this is a reality show? Aisha stood still, eyes on the floor. It was just food, Belinda scoffed. Nothing is just food when you're poor. People will say you were begging for love. And they might be right. Aisha bit her tongue. Arguing would only make it worse. She'd learned long ago that silence hurt less than words. Her cousin Harper sat at the table, scrolling her phone with a smirk. Should have charged him extra for the meat. Cousin, she muttered. Belinda turned sharply. Enough, Harper. We're not running a soup kitchen. Then she looked back at Aisha. From tomorrow, you don't set foot near that gate again. We can't afford another scandal. Aisha nodded, her chest tight. Yes, ma'am. That night she didn't sleep. The house hummed with tension. She thought about Malcolm, his calm face, his steady tone. No one had ever looked at her like that before. Like she mattered even when the world said she didn't. Across the street, in a cramped security booth, Malcolm stared at the blank wall of monitors. Each screen showed a slice of Eden Valley. Perfect. Sterile and utterly lifeless. Derek nudged him. You good, man? Malcolm blinked, then forced a grin. Define good. You're on the gossip circuit. That's usually bad for rich folks, not gatekeepers. Malcolm chuckled softly. Maybe I'm just reversing tradition. Derek shook his head. You're crazy. You know that, right? Yeah, Malcolm murmured, but it's the only way to stay sane here. He leaned back, thinking about Aisha. The video didn't bother him. It was expected. What bothered him was how quickly people believed it. Privilege made lies believable, and decency looked suspicious. He picked up his notebook again and wrote, They build walls to feel safe, but their fears always find a way through. The next day, Aisha's truck was gone. Her usual corner stood empty except for a faded chalk line on the pavement. No smell of food, no sound of her laugh, just silence and the hum of wealth pretending to be peace. Malcolm asked Derek quietly, "You see the food truck girl?" Derek frowned. "Nope, heard her aunt shut it down. Said the girl's not working here anymore." Malcolm's hand tightened around the notebook. Figures. When the shift ended, he didn't go home. Instead, he crossed the street, stood by the empty curb, and looked at the faint grease marks on the asphalt. He could almost hear her voice again. "Don't forget to breathe that rich people air for me." He smiled sadly. "Still breathing, Chef?" Behind him, a luxury SUV rolled past. Inside, Harper Graves raised her phone again, aiming for another photo. But this time, Malcolm looked straight into her lens. Just one long, steady glance, enough to make her hand tremble before she dropped the phone. For the first time, someone inside Eden Valley realized maybe the gatekeeper wasn't just guarding the gate. Maybe he was watching the kingdom. Rain began to fall that night, the kind that didn't roar, only whispered. New Crest City shimmered under streetlights, the roads slick as glass. Malcolm leaned against the gate booth, watching drops gather on the rim of his cap. Eden Valley looked even colder when it rained. Money didn't like to get wet. He'd been standing there for hours, lost in thought, when a soft voice came from behind. "You really do live here, huh?" He turned. Aisha stood under a frayed umbrella, rain trickling down her coat. Her eyes were tired but bright, the kind of light that refused to die even in storm water. He blinked, half shocked. "You shouldn't be here." "I'm already fired," she said, shrugging. "What more can they take from me?" Malcolm exhaled, glancing around. "If the guards see you," she laughed, "let them. They already think I'm dating the gatekeeper." Her tone was half defiant, half broken. He gestured toward the small shelter near the booth. "Come inside before you drown." She followed, shaking the rain from her umbrella. The booth smelled like coffee and damp paper, tiny but strangely safe. For a while, they said nothing, just listened to the rain tap against the window, slow and steady like a heartbeat trying to find rhythm. Then Aisha spoke softly. "I didn't thank you for trying to defend me. You don't have to," he said. "It only made things worse for you." She smiled faintly. "Maybe, but sometimes it's nice to know someone's willing to lose with you." Malcolm stared at the floor, a crooked smile creeping in. "Lose with me, huh?" "You have no idea how much I've been losing lately." "Try me," she said. He hesitated, then sighed. "I used to live somewhere not far from here. Big house, big noise. People laughed at my jokes even when they weren't funny. Then one day I realized none of them were laughing with me. They were laughing at my wallet." Aisha tilted her head. "So you left?" "Yeah," he said quietly. "Walked away. Wanted to see who I was without the noise." She studied him for a long moment. "And what did you find?" He looked at her, eyes steady. "You! The first person who ever gave me something I didn't pay for." Her breath caught. The room went still. Outside, thunder rolled distantly, like applause from the sky. "Careful," she whispered, smiling through the quiet. "You sound like a poet," he chuckled. "Only on minimum wage." They both laughed softly, the sound warm against the chill. Then her expression shifted. "Malcolm, if they knew who you really were, what would they say?" He looked away. "That depends on which part of me they'd believe, and which one's the real you." He paused, then said, "The one who'd rather guard a gate than live behind one." For a moment, neither spoke. The rain slowed to a drizzle. Aisha reached for her umbrella. "I should go before my aunt wakes up." He nodded. "Be careful." As she stepped out, she turned back, eyes soft. "Thank you for not treating me like I was small," he smiled. "I don't think you know how tall you really are." She laughed under her breath and disappeared into the rain. Malcolm watched until she vanished beyond the lamps, then whispered, "Maybe paradise was never behind those gates at all." He didn't notice Harper Graves, parked 2 houses down, phone camera glowing again. This time, catching the first real secret Eden Valley couldn't contain. The next morning, the air inside Eden Valley carried the kind of silence that usually came before gossip detonated. Every glance lasted half a second too long. Every smile hit a question. Malcolm felt it before he even reached the booth. Derek handed him a folded printout. "Man, I think we've got a problem." It was another viral post. This time, the photo wasn't grainy, it was crystal clear. Aisha standing by the booth at midnight. Malcolm's head bowed toward her, the rain turning streetlights into halos. The caption read, "Security loves company. Guess who's keeping the gate and the girl?" Malcolm stared at it for a long moment. His face revealed nothing, but his pulse thudded like heavy machinery. He folded the paper neatly, slipped it into his jacket, and said, "Let them think what they want." Derek frowned. "You sure?" "This one's meaner. They're tagging management now, I'm sure," Malcolm replied. "Let's see how far they'll dig." Inside, a quiet calculation began. He'd built Read Horizons with data, patterns, and the ability to predict chaos. Eden Valley wasn't any different. It was just human chaos in high heels. But this time, it wasn't business, it was personal. Across town, Aisha wiped down an empty counter in her aunt's restaurant. Business had slowed to a trickle. Even regulars avoided the tension. She caught sight of herself in the window. Pale, tired, haunted by rumors that refused to die. Her aunt's voice rang from the kitchen. "If you had any sense, you'd stay invisible. Men like that, they'll ruin you," Aisha whispered back. "He's not like that." Belinda laughed sharply. "They're all like that, baby. They just hide it better." She didn't answer. Deep down, Aisha knew the woman wasn't talking about Malcolm. She was talking about her own regrets, her own bitterness carved into warning signs. When the doorbell chimed, Aisha looked up. Malcolm stood in the doorway, still in his uniform, rain dripping from his shoulders. Her heart stuttered. "You shouldn't be here," he smiled faintly. "You keep saying that." Belinda stormed out of the kitchen. "What do you want, guard?" He met her glare evenly. "To buy lunch. I hear the chef's good." Her lips tightened. "We don't serve people who humiliate us online." He reached into his pocket, placed a $100 bill on the counter. "Then consider this damage control." Aisha's eyes widened. "Malcolm," he looked at her gently. "Let me eat in peace. 5 minutes. That's all." Belinda hesitated, then snatched the bill and vanished into the kitchen. Aisha exhaled. "You really shouldn't have come." "Too late," he said softly. "They already think I'm the villain. Might as well give them a show." She tried to smile, failed. "You're going to lose your job," he shrugged. "Jobs can be replaced." "People can't." Something in his tone silenced her. He leaned closer. "Listen, I can fix this, but it has to stay quiet a little longer." "Fix what?" "You'll see. Just trust me." For a moment, her doubt flickered, then faded. "I do." Behind them, Harper Graves watched through the restaurant window. Her phone raised again, but when the flash lit the glass, Malcolm turned, his eyes meeting hers head-on. For the first time, Harper lowered her camera. Something about the calm in his stare, unbothered, unreadable, made her hesitate. She didn't know it yet. But the game was changing. The man they called the gatekeeper wasn't hiding anymore. He was waiting. By Friday, Eden Valley's air tasted like tension. Rumors had stopped whispering. They were now shouting from every manicured hedge. The security office buzzed with quiet judgment. Every time Malcolm walked past, conversations paused mid-sentence. Eyes followed him the way people watch a slow-moving fire. At noon, he received the call he'd been expecting. "Mr. Reed," the property manager's voice oozed from the speaker, smooth and false. "The board would like to discuss your conduct with one of our residents." Malcolm smiled faintly. "My conduct? He'd been accused before, only last time it was over corporate mergers, not lunch breaks. "I'll be there," he said, and hung up. Derek looked up from his desk. "They're calling you in?" "Yeah. You want backup?" Malcolm chuckled. "No, this is Eden Valley. They only fight with words and wine." Across town, Aisha's day was collapsing in slow motion. Her aunt's restaurant, usually filled with chatter, was silent except for the scrape of Belinda's heels. "You've done it now," Belinda hissed, slamming a receipt book on the counter. "Do you know who called me?" "Mrs. Keene. She said her neighbors are boycotting us. Said we're feeding scandal." Aisha clenched her hands. "It's not my fault people are cruel." Belinda's eyes narrowed. "It is your fault for being careless. You brought shame to this family." Harper sat in the corner, pretending to check her phone, but clearly filming again. "Turn that off!" Aisha snapped. Harper rolled her eyes. "Relax, just making memories." Belinda snatched the phone and slammed it down. "Enough! Both of you!" She turned to Aisha, voice trembling with rage. "You're finished here. Pack your things and get out of my sight." Aisha's throat tightened. "Auntie, please. I need this job." "Then you should have thought about that before feeding that man." The slap landed faster than the words. Aisha froze, one hand on her cheek. For a moment, no one moved. Then Harper whispered, almost gleeful, "Wow, you really hit her." Belinda's voice cracked. "Go, before I forget your family." Aisha stepped back, trembling. "Family doesn't do this, neither does disgrace." Belinda spat. She turned and ran, apron still on, into the street where the rain had just started again. The city blurred, headlights streaking through her tears. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't go home. Meanwhile, in the conference room of Eden Valley's management board, Malcolm sat across from three people in suits who smelled like polished judgment. One of them, Mrs. Wallace, folded her manicured hands. "You've caused quite a stir, Mr. Reed." "Did I?" Malcolm said evenly. "I thought gossip caused itself." A man beside her frowned. "We expect our staff to uphold professionalism, and you define professionalism as not eating lunch?" Mrs. Wallace leaned forward. "As not fraternizing with outsiders, especially in ways that could reflect poorly on Eden Valley's image." Malcolm's eyes stayed calm. "Eden Valley's image reflects exactly what it is. What's that supposed to mean?" The man snapped. "Glass," Malcolm said. "Beautiful, fragile, and terrified of fingerprints." For a second, silence filled the room. Then he stood, buttoned his jacket, and added quietly, "If you're done lecturing me about morality, I'll return to guarding your paradise." He left before they could respond. Outside, Derek was waiting by the gate. "You okay?" Malcolm's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, but Eden Valley isn't." That night, thunder rolled again, just like the night Aisha first came to him, except now, both of them were standing on the edge of something darker. Aisha without a home, Malcolm without a disguise, and Eden Valley, for the first time, was about to see what happens when its gatekeeper stops guarding. The storm didn't stop that night. It only changed shape. Rain turned to rumor, thunder to whispers, and by morning, those whispers had reached places even Malcolm never expected. Derek met him at the gate with eyes wide. "You're not gonna like this, man." He handed over a printed tabloid. Front page headline, "The Secret Heir of Reed Horizons. Sources claim the Eden Valley Guard is a billionaire in disguise." Malcolm's chest went still. There it was, the story he'd been hiding from, written like a fairy tale for the bored rich. Photos of him, pieced together from the viral clips, a few blurry shots of his real life, a charity gala, a conference in New York. Someone had connected the dots. He read the first line aloud. "The so-called gatekeeper romance might just be the city's strangest undercover experiment. If it's true, the man behind the gates is none other than Malcolm Reed, heir to the Reed Horizons empire," Derek groaned. "Man, they found you. I told you this whole undercover thing would backfire." Malcolm folded the paper carefully. Maybe it's time it did. Across the city, Aisha sat on a park bench, shivering in yesterday's raincoat. She'd been wandering for hours, avoiding home, avoiding calls. When she finally opened her phone, the same headline glared back at her. Her breath caught. Malcolm Reed? The article showed his real photo, clean suit, tailored smile, a billionaire's face. She whispered, "No, that can't be him." But the more she read, the more the truth dug in. The charity foundations, the energy projects, the exact same brown eyes that had looked at her through. A gate booth window. A gust of wind ripped the newspaper from her lap. It fluttered down the sidewalk like a confession she couldn't unsee. Her phone buzzed and unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Hello? Aisha. Malcolm's voice, low, calm, but urgent. Where are you? Her words stumbled. So it's true. You lied to me. I didn't lie, he said. I hid. Same thing, she snapped. No, I needed to see who I was without the name. Without the noise, she swallowed hard. And what did you see? You, he said softly. The only thing real I've found in years. Silence hung heavy between them. Finally, she whispered, You should have told me. I know. But I wanted you to see me first, before the world told you what to see. A tear slipped down her cheek. Well, congratulations. Now the world sees you. And me? Aisha, listen, there's more going on. People are watching. It's not safe for you. What are you talking about? But before he could answer, her phone beeped. The battery dying. Then the line went dead. At the same moment, in a penthouse high above New Crest, a woman in a black suit watched the same headlines on her tablet. Lady Cynthia Reed, Malcolm's mother, tapped the screen sharply. What the hell is my son doing pretending to be a laborer? She hissed, her assistant stammered. He said he needed perspective, ma'am, she scoffed. Perspective? He's humiliating the family. Find him. Now. Back at the gate, reporters were already gathering. Cameras flashing through the rain. Malcolm stood motionless, eyes steady behind his cap. Derek muttered, They'll eat you alive, man. Malcolm nodded once. Maybe it's time they choke. He turned away from the cameras, dialing again, straight to voicemail. Aisha, he whispered, please pick up. Don't disappear on me. But she already had. The city swallowed her silence, and for the first time, the man who had everything realized he could still lose the only thing that mattered. The sky above New Crest was the color of bruised silver, beautiful, but warning of something dark beneath. Aisha walked through the back alley behind her aunt's restaurant, hood up, clutching her phone like it could explain her life. Every few steps, another headline appeared on passing screens. The billionaire gatekeeper. Love across class lines? From guard to gold, her stomach churned. She hadn't eaten since yesterday. Not that she could keep anything down. Everyone she passed seemed to recognize her. The looks varied, curiosity, envy, disgust, but they all asked the same silent question. What did you do to deserve him? When she reached the door, Belinda was waiting, not angry this time. Worse, calm, smiling. Aisha, she said sweetly. Come in, dear. We need to talk. Aisha hesitated but stepped inside. The restaurant smelled of bleach and frying oil. Harper sat at a table, scrolling through her phone. Her grin was thin, sharp. Our celebrity's back. Belinda gestured to the chair across from her. Sit. Aisha obeyed slowly. Her aunt poured tea, something she hadn't done in years. We saw the news, Belinda began. About your little gatekeeper. Or should I say billionaire? Aisha looked down. I didn't know. He never told me? Of course he didn't, Belinda said softly. Men like him never do, until it suits them. Aisha's voice cracked. He's not like that. Belinda smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Maybe, but the world thinks he is. And the world loves a good story. Harper set her phone down. Mom's right. People are eating this up. You're trending. Do you know what that means? Aisha frowned. That people have nothing better to do? Harper laughed. No, it means we finally have leverage. Belinda's tone shifted, silky, dangerous. Listen carefully, child. That man's family will do anything to protect their reputation. They'll pay handsomely to keep you quiet. Aisha's eyes widened. You're not serious. Oh, I'm very serious, Belinda said. All you have to do is play your part. Cry on camera, say he used you, that he lied. Then we settle privately. A nice payout, and all this goes away. Aisha shot to her feet. You want me to blackmail him? Don't say it like that, Harper said, grinning. Call it compensation. Aisha's hands trembled. He didn't hurt me. He saved me from people exactly like this. Belinda stood too, voice hardening. Don't be stupid. You think he'll still want you once his mother drags him home? You're nothing to them, Aisha. Just a chapter he'll rewrite. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she didn't look away. Then let me be the chapter that doesn't sell. Belinda's hand twitched. For a moment, Aisha thought she might hit her again, but instead, her aunt exhaled and said coldly, You'll regret that. She stormed toward the kitchen. Harper followed, muttering, We'll make sure she does. That night, Aisha packed a small bag, clothes, her mother's necklace, and the old photo she kept folded in her wallet. She didn't know where to go, but anywhere was better than this. When she stepped outside, she caught a movement in the shadows, 2 men leaning by a van, whispering. One of them glanced up and smiled. Evening, Miss Torres. Your aunt said you needed a ride. Every instinct screamed run, but before she could move, a hand grabbed her arm. The other man pressed a cloth against her mouth. The world tilted, blurred, and then went black. As the van door slammed shut, one of them said, Boss wants her safe till the deal's done. The tires squealed into the night, and for the first time Aisha understood. The headlines weren't the trap. She was. New Crest never really slept. It just pretended to. Underneath the polished skyline, deals and secrets changed hands in the dark, and somewhere beyond the city lights, a black van rolled toward the industrial district, its headlights slicing through fog like knives. Inside, Aisha stirred. Her wrists ached where the ropes cut into her skin. The men in front barely spoke. Only the static of the radio filled the air. One of them laughed quietly. Boss said no bruises. Just keep her scared, the other replied. She's already scared enough. He was wrong. Aisha wasn't scared. She was angry. Her mind replayed her aunt's cold smile. Harper's camera flash. The sound of the van door slamming shut. If she got out of this alive, she swore, someone would pay for turning her life into a ransom. Across town, Malcolm burst into the security office. Derek jumped from his chair. Whoa, what happened? She's gone, Malcolm said, voice low but shaking. 2 men grabbed her outside Belinda's diner. I traced the van on the cameras. Plates fake, but it turned toward the docks. Derek's jaw dropped. You called the cops? Malcolm nodded. They'll take hours. I'm not waiting. He grabbed his jacket and keys. Derek caught his arm. Bro, you're not Superman. Malcolm's eyes hardened. No, just a man who's done hiding. The rain came down harder as he drove, windshield wipers struggling to keep up. He followed the faint trail on the GPS, an old tracker app he'd once built for logistics. The signal blinked weakly near the edge of town, close to a row of abandoned warehouses. He parked the car, cut the lights, and stepped into the mud. The place smelled like rust and salt. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, slow, deliberate, like the ticking of a countdown. He moved quietly along the side wall, spotting the van parked near a half-collapsed structure. 2 silhouettes stood smoking by the door. Malcolm's heart pounded. He picked up a broken pipe from the ground. It wasn't much, but it would do. Inside, Aisha struggled with the ropes. Every knot she loosened made her wrists burn, but she didn't stop. She could hear footsteps pacing outside, and once in a while, the faint vibration of a phone ringing. Her captors were getting nervous. That gave her hope. Then, a sharp crash. Metal hitting bone, a grunt. The door burst open, rain sweeping in. Malcolm? He stood there, soaked to the skin, pipe still in his hand. The man beside her lunged, but Malcolm was faster. A single swing to the ribs, another to the jaw, and the man went down hard. Aisha gasped. How did you? He knelt and untied her hands. Later. They stumbled toward the exit just as headlights flared outside. 3 more figures stepped out of a car, her aunt's husband in front shouting, Don't move! Malcolm pulled Aisha behind him. So this is your family, he said bitterly. The man sneered. She should have stayed quiet. Now we'll end it clean. He drew a gun. Before he could aim, sirens screamed in the distance, blue lights flashing through the rain. The kidnappers froze. Malcolm smiled faintly. Guess the cops were faster than you thought. Derek's voice echoed from behind the patrol cars. You owe me a beer for this, man. The officers rushed forward, forcing the kidnappers to the ground. Aisha clung to Malcolm's arm, trembling, not from fear, but from the shock of survival. One officer turned to him. We got your call, Mr. Reed. You're lucky we traced that signal. Malcolm nodded. Luck had nothing to do with it. As the police led her aunt's husband away in cuffs, Aisha whispered, You came for me. Malcolm looked at her, rain sliding down his face. Always, he said. But as the sirens faded, neither of them noticed a black sedan parked across the street. Inside, a woman in pearls and power watched silently, her face hidden by the glass. Lady Cynthia Reed had found her son, and she didn't look pleased. The storm had passed, but the air still carried its memory. Wet asphalt, static in the clouds, and the faint scent of ozone. Malcolm's car pulled up the marble driveway of the Reed estate, headlights sweeping over pillars that looked more like prison bars than home. He parked, killed the engine, and glanced at Aisha in the passenger seat. She was silent, wrapped in one of his coats, eyes fixed on the mansion ahead. Are you sure about this? She whispered. He nodded. If I don't face her now, she'll come for you instead. The front doors opened before they could knock. Lady Cynthia Reed stood framed in gold light, a vision of poise and fury. Her pearls gleamed like a warning. Inside, she said, both of you. The house smelled like wealth and disapproval. Everything was too polished, too quiet. They followed her through a hallway lined with family portraits, each face a reminder of legacy and power. Cynthia stopped in the great room, turned sharply and gestured toward the sofa. Aisha hesitated, then sat down. Malcolm remained standing. Mother, he began, but she raised a hand. No, I'll speak first. Her voice was smooth, deliberate. You disappeared for months. You rejected your name, your company, your family. Now I find you living as a gatekeeper, consorting with staff. She didn't look at Aisha when she said it, which somehow made it worse. Malcolm's jaw tightened. She has a name, Cynthia's gaze hardened. So did your reputation, he exhaled slowly. You can't shame me with something I gave up willingly. Willingly? She laughed, sharp and humorless. You think running away makes you noble? You made a fool of yourself and of this family. Do you know what they're saying in the papers? Let them talk, he said evenly. They always have, her voice rose. And her? What about her? You think they'll ever accept her in our world? Aisha's hands trembled. Mrs. Reed, Cynthia turned, eyes like glass. Don't speak. The silence was heavy, electric. Then Malcolm stepped forward, voice calm but cutting. I didn't fall in love with your world, Mother. I fell in love with someone who never needed it. For a second, something cracked behind Cynthia's expression. But pride is a stubborn thing. She straightened. You don't understand what you're giving up. Oh, I understand perfectly, he said. What you built here, it's not legacy, it's fear. And I'm done living afraid. Aisha rose slowly, her voice quiet but clear. Mrs. Reed, I don't want your son's money or your approval. I just want him to be free to choose who he is. Cynthia turned to her, eyes narrowing. And you think that's you? Aisha smiled sadly. No, I think that's his decision. The room went still. Even the clock seemed to hesitate. Then, somewhere deeper in the house, another voice broke the silence. Enough. Chief Robert Reed, Malcolm's father, stepped into the light. Age had softened his features, but not his authority. He walked to his wife's side, placing a steady hand on her arm. Cynthia, you forget what it means to fight for love. I married you when I had nothing. Remember? Cynthia's lips parted, but no sound came. He turned to Malcolm. Your mother will come around. She always does. But if you believe this woman stands for what's right, then stand with her. Malcolm looked at Aisha, then back at his parents. I already have. As they left the mansion, the night air felt lighter. Aisha exhaled shakily. Do you think she'll ever forgive you? He smiled faintly. Maybe. But I'm not the one who needs forgiveness. From the upstairs window, Cynthia watched them disappear into the mist, and for the first time, doubt crept into her perfect world. Justice in New Crest had a smell: old paper, polished wood, and coffee that burned more than it comforted. The courthouse that morning was full. Reporters filled the aisles, their cameras whispering like insects. Everyone wanted a piece of the story: the billionaire gatekeeper, the girl he loved, and the family who sold her to fear. Isha sat quietly beside Malcolm in the front row. Her wrists still bore faint scars from the ropes, though she kept them hidden beneath her sleeves. When she looked up, she saw her Aunt Belinda and her Uncle Victor being led into the courtroom in handcuffs. They didn't look at her. Maybe couldn't. The judge entered, stern, gray-haired, eyes heavy with the weight of human failure. All rise. When everyone sat, the air shifted. The prosecutor began, "Your Honor, this case is not about wealth. It's about power abused and innocence betrayed. The defendants kidnapped their own niece, attempted extortion, and conspired to commit harm. All for profit." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Belinda flinched. Victor stared straight ahead. The defense tried to twist it. They acted out of desperation, not malice. They were struggling financially. The judge cut in. "Desperation doesn't excuse cruelty. Continue." Aisha's breath trembled. Every word felt like reopening an old wound. She leaned closer to Malcolm and whispered, "I don't want revenge." He nodded. "Then we'll ask for truth." When her name was called, she stood. The walk to the witness stand felt endless. She placed her hand on the Bible and whispered the oath. Her voice steady despite the quake inside her chest. The prosecutor asked, "Miss Torres, can you describe what happened the night you were taken?" She swallowed. "They told me my aunt sent them to drive me home. But when I refused their money, they forced me into the van. Did you hear them mention a plan?" "Yes," she said softly. "They said I'd stay alive only until the deal was done. And what deal was that?" She looked at Belinda then, eyes full of sadness instead of hate. "To sell my silence." A hush fell. Even the judge leaned forward slightly. Isha continued, voice breaking only once. "They wanted me to lie. To say Malcolm used me to make him pay. But he's the only one who ever saw me as a person, not a price." When she stepped down, people in the audience began to clap, quietly at first, then stronger. The judge banged his gavel once, but his eyes softened. The trial lasted hours. But the verdict was swift. Belinda and Victor Torres, the judge pronounced, for conspiracy, kidnapping, and attempted extortion, you are each sentenced to 20 years in state prison without parole. Gasps filled the room. Belinda cried silently. Victor shouted, "You'll regret this!" before being pulled away by officers. No one answered him. When it was over, Malcolm guided Aisha outside. The sunlight felt unreal, bright, almost holy. She stood there for a long moment, breathing in the warmth. "Is it strange," she said softly, "that I feel sad for them?" "No," Malcolm said. "That's what makes you better." They walked down the courthouse steps together, past the cameras and microphones. The noise of a city that had judged them once and was now applauding instead. Near the edge of the crowd, Cynthia Reed stood quietly beside Chief Robert. Her eyes met Aisha's. No anger, no pride, just reflection. Then she nodded once. Aisha nodded back. The sound of applause faded behind them as Malcolm whispered, "This isn't the end, you know." Aisha smiled faintly. "Good, I hate endings." They kept walking. Two figures against the light. One once born into power, one forged through pain. Both finally equal in the only way that mattered. 6 months later, New Crest looked different. Maybe the skyline hadn't changed. But the air had less about headlines, more about healing. And in a quiet corner of downtown, a small building was being painted in gold and white. The sign above the door read, "The Horizon Foundation for Dignity, Work, and Hope." Inside, Aisha stood on a ladder, brush in hand, laughing as a streak of paint smudged across her cheek. "Careful!" Malcolm called from below. At this rate, you'll paint yourself before the walls, she grinned. Maybe that's the price of vision, he chuckled. Aisha, you are the only person I know who can make charity work sound like an art project. That's because it is, she said, hopping down. Art, hope, justice, same paint, different walls. The foundation had started small. Just an idea scribbled on napkins during late-night talks. Now it was real, a training center, a legal aid office, and a shelter for women caught between poverty and possibility. Her story had spread further than she imagined. Not as a scandal, but as a reminder. Malcolm had used his company's resources quietly, letting Aisha take the lead. He'd insisted, "This is your voice. I'm just the microphone." Later that morning, volunteers bustled about, hanging curtains, unpacking books. A local news crew arrived to film the opening. Their reporter, a bright-eyed young woman, smiled nervously at Aisha. "Miss Torres, can I ask what inspired you to start the Horizon Foundation?" Aisha hesitated, glancing at Malcolm across the room. He gave a small nod. She turned to the camera and said, "Because I know what it's like to be treated as small, to be told you don't belong because your hands aren't soft enough or your accent doesn't match the neighborhood. But every person deserves dignity, whether they clean a mansion or own one." The reporter blinked, clearly moved. "And do you think people are changing?" Aisha smiled. "Some are. Others are learning. The rest will have to catch up." Laughter rippled softly through the room. It wasn't defiant, just alive. After the cameras left, Malcolm found her sitting by the window, sipping cold coffee and watching the city. "You were brilliant," he said. She shrugged. "I just told the truth." "Exactly," he said. "That's what brilliant sounds like." She nudged his shoulder. "Flattery doesn't make you taller, Mr. Reed," he smirked. "Good thing I have other strengths." For a while, they sat in comfortable silence. Then Aisha said quietly, "Do you ever think about the gate?" He looked up. "All the time. Do you miss it?" He shook his head. "No, but I remember it. The smell of rain, the way people avoided eye contact, the silence between rich and poor. I used to think that gate was just a job. Now I know it was a mirror," Aisha smiled. "And what did it show you?" "That freedom doesn't come from money," he said. "It comes from standing next to the right person when it rains." She blushed slightly, pretending to look away. "That's a good line. You practicing for your next press conference?" He laughed softly. "Nah, just for you." Outside, a group of neighborhood kids ran by, laughing, splashing puddles. One little girl stopped, staring at the new sign. "Miss," she called. "What's Horizon mean?" Aisha crouched, smiling. "It means what's ahead of you, sweetie. The place where the sky meets everything you dream." The girl nodded, then ran off again. Malcolm watched her go, then turned to Aisha. "Looks like your sky's getting bigger." Aisha looked up, sunlight breaking through the clouds. "Good," she said softly. "It's about time." The gate looked smaller now, maybe because Aisha was no longer the girl who used to stare at it from the outside. And Malcolm was no longer the man pretending to belong behind it. Eden Valley stood exactly as it always had. Immaculate lawns, guarded smiles, houses whispering wealth, but something in the air had changed. It wasn't just the season. It was the weight of what people finally knew. Malcolm parked just short of the old guard booth. He stepped out, hands in pockets, smiling faintly. "Strange," he murmured. "I used to think this place was the whole world." Aisha joined him, her hair catching the light breeze. "And now?" He looked at her. "Now it's just a fence." They walked slowly toward the booth. It was empty now. Derek had moved on to a better job. The management company had replaced the old brass sign with something modern and soulless. Still, traces of memory lingered. The coffee stains on the counter, the small crack in the glass from a storm years ago. Aisha ran her fingers across the edge of the booth window. "This is where it started," she said softly. "The piece of meat, the rain, the jokes, and the cameras," Malcolm added dryly. She laughed. "Don't forget the insults." Her laughter echoed down the quiet lane. It wasn't bitter. It was free. "Do you ever wonder," she said after a moment, "if the people who mocked you would recognize you now?" He smiled. "They don't have to. I didn't build my life to prove them wrong. I built it to make sure no one else has to start where we did." She nodded. "Then maybe this isn't the end." "It's never the end," he said. "It's the middle of something better." A slow rumble of wheels made them turn. A black town car pulled up. Beside the curb, the tinted window rolled down, and there she was, Lady Cynthia Reed, dressed in white this time. No pearls, no bodyguards, just her, holding a single file folder on her lap. For a long second, no one spoke. Then she said quietly, "You were right, Malcolm." He blinked, unsure. "About what?" "About fear. I built this family on it. On keeping people out instead of letting them in." Her eyes flicked to Aisha. "And you were the first to walk through the door I didn't even know was open." Aisha's throat tightened. "Mrs. Reed?" Cynthia shook her head. "Call me Cynthia." "You've earned it." She handed the folder out the window. Malcolm opened it. "Documents for a donation. The Reed Family Endowment," she said softly. "I want it to fund your foundation. It's time our name stood for something better." Aisha blinked hard, fighting tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Cynthia nodded once. "Take care of him. He's good at saving the world, terrible at eating breakfast." Then with a rare, gentle smile, she added, "And Malcolm, I'm proud of you." The car pulled away slowly, disappearing beyond the gates that once divided them all. They stood there in silence, watching the sun break across Eden Valley's rooftops. For the first time, the gate wasn't a symbol of exclusion. It was a frame around a new beginning. Malcolm turned to Aisha. "So," he said, "how does it feel being the woman who rebuilt an empire's conscience?" She smirked. "Exhausting. But the paint's dry." He laughed, and then quietly, almost as if to himself, he added, "You know, they say love can't change the world." She looked at him, eyes warm. "Maybe not all at once, but it can build a door where there used to be a wall." They walked away from the gate hand in hand, their reflections merging in the sunlight. No longer billionaire or waitress, just two souls who refused to let the world decide their worth. 10 years later, the city woke differently. New Crest no longer glittered just for the rich, it glowed for everyone who called it home. The skyline still reached for the clouds, but now, nestled among the towers of glass and gold, stood one low white building with a familiar name etched in bronze, the Horizon Institute for Equality and Innovation. Inside, a new generation filled the halls, young women, single fathers, students, dreamers, learning skills, studying law, and planning futures bigger than circumstance. And on the top floor, sunlight streaming across her desk, Aisha Reed watched them through the window with a smile that carried a decade of work. The door opened behind her. A teenage girl peeked in, dark curls, wide eyes, confidence that reminded everyone of someone. "Mrs. Reed?" Aisha turned, still half lost in thought. "Yes, Amari? They want you downstairs." "The mayor's here again," Aisha groaned playfully. "If he's asking for another photo op, tell him the paint's still drying." Amari giggled. "That's what Mr. Reed said too. Downstairs, Malcolm was helping hang a new mural in the lobby. It showed a line of workers in uniform, factory hands, janitors, guards, each face painted in rich, proud tones. At the center stood a single figure holding an open gate. Beneath it, in bold letters, "Dignity is not a luxury." The mayor clapped him on the back. "You've turned this city upside down, Mr. Reed," Malcolm smiled. "Not upside down, just right side up." Aisha joined them, wiping paint from her palms. The mayor handed her a framed proclamation. "Today, New Crest officially declares October 12th as Horizon Day in honor of your foundation's work in bridging class and opportunity." Applause filled the room, volunteers, journalists, and a few faces from Eden Valley. Older now, less proud, more human. Even Lady Cynthia Reed was there, smiling softly from the second row. When their eyes met, Aisha gave a small nod of gratitude. Cynthia mouthed 2 words back. Thank you. Later that evening, after the crowd had gone, the building felt peaceful. Malcolm and Aisha stood alone beneath the mural, holding hands. "Remember when we couldn't even get a landlord to rent us a room?" she said, laughing. Malcolm chuckled. "Now we own half the block," she nudged him. "Correction, you own it. I just decorate it." He raised a brow. "Decorate? You built it, Aisha. You gave people something to believe in. You even made my mother volunteer. Miracles do exist." They laughed quietly, the kind of laughter that comes from scars healed right. Outside, the city hummed, not the noise of vanity, but of life. Buses, bikes, music, conversation, equality in its simplest form, sounded like people unafraid to exist. Aisha looked up at the mural again. "Do you ever think about the gate?" she asked. Malcolm smiled. "Only when I want to remember how far we've walked," she nodded. "Then maybe we should put one here." He frowned playfully. "A gate? In the lobby?" "Yeah," she said, eyes glimmering. "An open one, to remind everyone who steps in there's no wrong side anymore." Malcolm slipped an arm around her shoulders. "You realize that's going to make architects crazy." She grinned. "Good. Let them work for once." As night fell, the city lights reflected off the Institute's glass facade, turning it into a mirror of a world reborn. Through that reflection, two figures stood side by side, no longer symbols, no longer stories, just people who had turned pain into purpose. Their voices drifted softly through the quiet hall. "Malcolm, think they'll remember us?" "Aisha, if we've done this right, they won't have to." The camera would fade there, from their silhouettes, to the mural, to the open gate, and finally to the plaque that read, "For every soul who ever stood outside looking in." They say money builds walls, but maybe it only builds mirrors, showing us who we've become when no one's watching. Malcolm Reed once believed he could hide behind a gate until he learned that true power doesn't come from keeping people out, but from letting someone in. And Aisha? She proved that kindness, quiet, stubborn, unprofitable kindness, isn't weakness. It's rebellion in its purest form. In a world obsessed with titles, they chose truth. In a city that measured worth by income, they measured it by impact. And when society demanded they pick a side, they built a bridge instead. Funny thing about justice, it doesn't shout. It just waits. Waits for ordinary people to stop apologizing for being good. And if you ask what changed this city, it wasn't wealth, it wasn't pity. It was a single act of decency, a girl adding a piece of meat to a poor man's plate. That's all it takes sometimes. A small act that says, "I see you." Because dignity doesn't begin in courtrooms or boardrooms, it begins at the table, between hunger and hope. Maybe the question was never about who had more. Maybe it was always about who shared first, and when you. Think about it. Every gate, every wall, every system we build can be rebuilt into a doorway if we remember why we built it in the first place. So before you judge the man at the gate, ask yourself which side you're really standing on. If this story moved you, share it. Because somewhere tonight, someone's still standing outside a closed gate, and maybe your voice is the one that opens it.